Thanks for inviting me. It's really daunting to be here, especially after that amazing talk, to give you the Defra update, which it's not going to be quite as exciting, just no spoilers. But I am happy to be here because I do want to tell you about all the work that we are up to. So I head up the domestic marine conservation team, but I'm also going to be covering some wider marine conservation work, wider marine work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure the presentation around the key commitments and targets that we've got, and then the actions that we're taking against them. There is an awful lot of work going on in Defra, but spoilers, sadly, there's going to be no big announcements in my talk, and I'm a bit sad about that. But just to be honest, what I want to do is to give you the confidence that we're moving in the right direction and stuff is going on. And I think Yvette talked about slowing down. That's probably the last thing you want to hear from government. So I want to say that we are doing lots, and there is a lot of momentum happening. So very nearly 1 year ago, government published its environmental improvement plan. And that's got this kind of overarching goal to halt the decline in biodiversity. And that's because we want thriving wildlife, don't we? We also have, under the UK Marine Policy Statement, our overarching goal for that all our seas should be clean, healthy, safe, productive, and biologically diverse. So we know that there is an awful lot happening in our seas, and what I want to show you is how some of our key policy levers will fit together to cope with the spatial and environmental challenges that we've got going on. How do we manage the threats of climate change and biodiversity loss, recognizing that for some things, like some of the solutions to net zero, we actually need more activity in our seas. And achieving those two goals that I set out requires a lot of collective action. It requires effort from teams all the way across Defra, across our agencies, across wider government, and from kind of probably most or all of you as well. And what we need to do is, obviously, we need to look at how we are managing activities in our wider seas, right at the top up there in the jigsaw, how we make sure development really is sustainable, and what actions we're taking to protect and recover our seas as well. And that's surrounded by this lens of kind of marine natural capital as well. So I'm going to cover most of these things on this jigsaw here, but not all, and you've got some other talks in this conference happening about fisheries management plans, about restoration, and about marine natural capital, so I won't spoil any of their exciting news as well. But we're going to start with a target that's really close to my heart, as you heard from the biography. We have the amazing kind of commitment to protect 30% of our seas by 2030 under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So in England, as you probably know, we have 40% of our seas already in marine protected areas. But you'll see at the bottom of that target, they need to be effectively conserved and managed. So what are we doing? Well, we've got about 60% of England's marine protected areas already have bylaws in place to protect the habitats and species, sensitive habitats and species from the effects of damaging fishing. We aim to have kind of the management in place for all our marine protected areas by the end of this year. And we're working with the Marine Management Organisation beyond 6 nautical miles to make sure the protected habitats and species have the management measures in place that they need. And we're doing the same work with the inshore fisheries and conservation authorities inshore to do that as well. There was a consultation last year on stage 2 for the MMO's Marine Protected Area Programme. We hope to have some news on that soon. And the consultation on stage 4, which is the highly mobile species marine protected areas, that's open at the moment. Sorry, call for evidence, not consultation. That's open. Please submit your evidence to that. We're also working with the MMO to look at whether any of the non-licensable activities need management as well, because it's not just about fishing, that's not the only pressure. So we're looking at things like anchoring as well. Does that need action as well? On the highly protected marine areas, I was so thrilled, having led the team, to get the first 3 sites designated last year. And now, obviously, we want to try and make sure that the management measures that the highly protected marine areas need are being put in place. And the Marine Management Organisation did a consultation on that at the end of last year. And again, we're hoping to be able to put those fisheries measures in as soon as we can. Also starting to evaluate those sites as well to really see, what environmental change is happening, but what are also the effects on businesses and local communities as well. We're also trying to consider how to bring forward more sites to consider designating as well at the moment. So as well as just designating marine protected areas, we have the new target under the Environment Act to make sure that all designated features are in favourable or recovering condition by 2042, with 70% in that higher favourable condition category. And there's an interim target there for 2028 as well. So although 2042 seems a long way off, we've actually got some interim targets to make sure we're kind of on track along the way. So we can't just kind of leave it till 2040 to do things. So the management measures I just talked about are obviously a key part of us helping to get to that target. But we also need to, again, look at other activities happening in our seas. We also need to... we're working with Natural England and JNCC to look at how we assess and report on that condition and how we might share that information more widely, because there's a lot of interest in what the condition of our seas are, obviously. We're also thinking about how we can bring in new sorts of evidence into our assessment and monitoring programs as well, such as natural capital. So on to our wider seas. We have our target under the UK Marine Strategy for our seas to achieve or maintain good environmental status. And this year, we will be reporting on the state of our seas against the kind of descriptors and their targets and indicators, and we hope to be able to share those draft assessments with you. There's also a fairly similar goal under the OSPAR's North East Atlantic Environment Strategy that you saw for the UK Marine Policy Statement goal. And our work with OSPAR is really, really important to us because there's so many kind of cross-boundary issues that happen in our seas. So you'll hear more about OSPAR's Quality Status Report a bit later, but we're using a lot of that information to help with our UK Marine Strategy reporting, and a lot of our scientists in JNCC and CFAS contribute into the OSPAR kind of groups and things as well. But our seas are obviously important for more than wildlife, and they're really important to help us meet our net zero targets with some really stretching goals for having offshore wind in our seas. You can see these big commitments under the British Energy Security Strategy. I always struggle to say that. For Defra, we are contributing an offshore wind environmental improvement programme. And that's to support and speed up consenting at sea while kind of trying to manage the effects on the marine environment as well and kind of minimise that. So the Offshore Wind Environmental Improvement Package, it's a tricky acronym, has a number of elements. So one of them is thinking about a new approach to looking at compensation in marine protected areas. We're looking at how to design the first environmental standards for offshore wind, looking at developing a fund that developers can pay into to pay for conservation action. We're looking at how we increase efforts to tackle marine noise, and that includes updating a joint position statement on unexploded ordnance, which sounds quite exciting. I think Joanna Lumley seems to be quite involved in that for some reason. And we're also looking at strategic compensation measures as well. So we're planning on consulting on quite a few elements of that package this year, and there should be more news on strategic compensation very soon. The Environmental Improvement Plan also committed us to developing a marine net gain policy for England as well. And last month, we were really pleased that we confirmed the high-level principles for marine net gain. Subject to what we find out about costs and impacts of marine net gain, in principle, marine net gain should become mandatory for kind of new development activities in our seas, not for fishing though. It's a really big and exciting step change for kind of marine recovery. We know we need to gather lots more evidence on how it might actually work, and there's some nervousness about how it could work. So we want to really work with the sector to kind of develop the policy as it goes forwards. One of the things we get asked about the most is a marine spatial prioritisation. And that work is looking at how we best use space at sea, particularly in the face of increasing demands. So what we're doing we're working with the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero as they develop a strategic spatial energy plan and thinking how that will work. But we're also doing our own work on gathering evidence to kind of model future demands at sea. And that will help us optimize the kind of use of our seas. We're also looking at how we can better co-locate activities at seas as well. And there's actually a fisheries and cabling co-location workshop going on today as well to look at that. And we're also starting to think about how government could prioritise. For lots of activities in our seas, they require a marine licence, and we want the marine licensing system to work well both for applicants and for the environment as well. So we're looking at bringing more efficiencies into the marine licensing system, and that's potentially some new exemptions, new self-service. We're looking at how we can better support our regulators. And following the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act that came to force that Sally mentioned, we want to make sure that the new system of environmental outcome reports that will be developed through that, and those are things that are going to replace environmental impact assessments. We need to make sure those really work for activities at sea. They work for the marine environment as well. Obviously, the theme for this conference is about inclusivity, and we want to better connect people with the marine environment and also with how the marine environment's used as well. So we want to widen opportunities for people to engage, and we're moving away from fully kind of online or written consultations to more hybrid ones. And the recent highly protected marine areas and fisheries management plan consultations were good examples of where we got out and about and went to kind of gather evidence and listen to communities and stakeholders about what they thought about proposals. We're trying to better understand things like well-being and ocean literacy as well. And we really want to kind of be more open about the evaluation work that we're doing on our policies too. So, back to the jigsaw. So you can see there's an awful lot going on in the marine environment, and there's lots of activities kind of happening as well that we're doing to try and help make our seas reach those overall targets I mentioned at the beginning. So I hope that you can see that there's progress and momentum and action happening, and that how we need to work and are working kind of across the top line of the wider seas, making sure development is sustainable and doing lots of actions for kind of conservation and recovery. And we want to work with all of you to help achieve those things. Thank you.